Hi there. It's March 27th and we're continuing our progress through the good news of Luke, and we're in chapter 7. We're reading from verses 36 through to chapter 8 and verse 3. In our reading today we encounter a number of women. One particular woman who ministered to Jesus in a very unusual way, other women who supported him and helped him. One thing we can see here is Jesus' relationship to women is very untypical for men of his day. He connects with them, he has to do with them, he even receives support from them. And in particularly at the beginning of our reading here, we see a woman who comes in who has an alabaster container. In Greek it's called an alabastron miro, an alabaster container of myrrh, very expensive perfume. Others of the gospel writers, Mark and Matthew in particular, says that it was worth a lot of money. But in this story, the focus is on the woman rather than on the alabaster box. And she anoints Jesus, and then she begins to weep over his feet and to wipe his feet with her hair. Now, just picture this. Sometimes we read these stories and we don't exactly connect. Imagine what a sensuous experience this would be. What a sensuous moment this would be. This is a woman very close to Jesus. And the Pharisee Simon, in whose house he is eating, is appalled. And he says if this man was a prophet, he would know what kind of woman this is. She was actually obviously known locally as a sinner. And Luke just has her described as a sinner. He doesn't call her a prostitute. We're not sure what the sin is. We can assume that maybe she was a woman of loose virtue. But certainly Jesus doesn't stop her. He allows her to continue, and he receives her honour and he receives her appreciation. And he sees beyond just the sensuousness of the action, and he sees to her heart. And as always with Jesus, he can see what's going on inside. And so when Simon is critical of what he's doing, Jesus turns to Simon and says, "Simon, let me tell you something. I came to your house and you didn't give me any water to wash my feet," which is very unusual in Israel, to have a guest in your house and not to offer to wash their feet. "You didn't give me any oil, you didn't give me any of the normal courtesies, any of the normal honorifics that a house guest would receive. And yet," Jesus says, "this woman has anointed my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair and anointed my feet with this incredibly expensive perfume." And then he tells a little story. He tells a little parable, one of these mashalim, these life guide stories. And he says, and contrasting a slave who was forgiven, or someone who was forgiven a debt of 50 denarii and the other one 500. Who is going to love more, the one who's forgiven him? And Simon obviously answers, well, the one who's forgiven more. And then Jesus said to him, look, this woman has been forgiven much, and she loves much, but whoever is forgiven little loves little. Very powerful words Jesus is using here to demonstrate to this woman that she is really giving a full devotion of her heart. And he sends her away, he blesses her, and he sends her away in peace. And then at the beginning of chapter 3, we read here, at the beginning of chapter 8, up to verse 3, we read that Jesus was ministered to by women who had obviously means to do this. Wealthy women maybe from noble families, women who had the ability to support Jesus. And he doesn't turn away. He doesn't denigrate their contribution. In fact, their contribution is really important to him. We can see here very clearly that Jesus is bringing a new way of looking at things, a new order into relationship between men and women. Obviously, it's going to be centuries before things really open up and really change for women. But right from the word go, from the time of Jesus, even from the time of Paul, even though they come in for a lot of stick, Paul comes in for a lot of stick, there is room made for women to learn, for women to study, for women to have responsibility, for women to share in the ministry of Jesus. It's important that we see that God has called us together, men and women, to serve. And there is not a hierarchy. In God's eyes, there is the blessing of being together in his ministry, because together we express the full image of God. So let's be encouraged as we read today Jesus' encouragement, Jesus' receiving of the ministry of women in this very important reading that we've been reading today. Have a very good March 20.